All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into the world of crypto oracles.
Oh, yeah.
Frame this as a kind of a crypto judo match. We're going to be looking at Pyth versus Chainlink. You know, it's a battle of different philosophies when it comes to oracles. And we've got some really interesting recent performance data to see which one is really landing those impactful moves, right? First, we've got Pyth in one corner. Think of them as like the agile challenger in this crypto judo match, right? Really laser focused on delivering real-time market data across a ton of blockchains. I think last time I checked, it was like over 97.
Wow.
And they focus on something called a pull oracle network.
Right.
So what does that mean for you, the listener? It essentially means that decentralized applications, or dApps, can actively request the data they need exactly when they need it.
Yeah.
So they're not just constantly bombarded with information.
Right.
They can pull exactly what they need.
Only what they need.
When they need it. And that's kind of the core of how they're powering their price feeds, right?
Exactly.
You get these up-to-the-second price updates, benchmarks for more historical data, Express Relay, which we'll get into a little bit later. That's designed to help minimize something called MEV, or minor extractable value.
Okay.
And also they have a secure random number generator called Pyth Entropy.
Okay.
So they've got a lot going on.
Yeah, they do.
And they've really built out this really impressive network of over 110 first-party data providers.
First-party data providers, that's interesting.
So they're getting this information from all these different sources. It's not just one centralized place, which kind of plays into their whole thing.
Makes sense.
So in the other corner, we've got Chainlink. But I think we all know that Chainlink is like...
Absolutely. Big
dog.
Big dog, right.
Yeah, the one to beat, so to speak.
The heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
Right.
Been around?
They've been around for a long time. They're a significant player in the Oracle space.
For a while.
So let's get this crypto judo match underway.
Okay, let's do it.
Round one, what we're calling the transaction volume takedown.
Yeah, right. This
is all about how much transaction activity these oracles are actually facilitating. And this is where things get really interesting.
The Masari report is highlighting Pyth's absolutely massive year-over-year increase in total transaction value, or TTV, in Q4 2024.
Okay.
A whopping 459.1% jump.
Wow.
Reaching $175.2 billion in TTV.
So that's their total transaction value in that last quarter.
That last quarter of 2024.
Right.
Massive, massive increase.
Yeah.
And they're emphasizing this as a key way to gauge how much oracles are actually being used, especially in those high-speed DeFi applications where speed and volume are critical.
Yeah, that's all about speed.
It's all about speed in those areas.
Yeah, so what that's saying is the applications focused on high-speed transactions are finding Pyth's model particularly well-suited to their needs.
Makes sense.
So it's really interesting to see, and they actually led in TTV for that quarter with a 41% market share. 41% of all of the volume going through oracles, at least as measured by TTV, which is a good measure, I think, of the actual transactional throughput. That these oracles are enabling, making it very relevant for these dynamic DeFi environments like decentralized exchanges and derivatives platforms and the like. So I think what this points to, if we connect it back to the bigger picture, is a potential evolution in the oracle landscape.
Okay.
So we all know TVS, or total value secured, is a big metric that's thrown around for oracles.
Yeah.
That's the total value of assets secured by the oracle network.
Right.
But this new focus on TTV, which we see Pyth really emphasizing, I think points to their strength in these fast-paced, high-volume applications.
Right.
So maybe what we're seeing is the oracle market become a bit more specialized, with certain providers focused on high-volume transaction throughput, whereas others are focusing on securing vast amounts of value.
So it's almost like different weight classes, right?
Almost, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
It's like you've got your heavyweights and then you've got like your I don't know, your featherweights or something like that, right?
Exactly.
And they each kind of excel in their own
domain.
Their own niche. Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense.
Okay. Let's move on to round two of this crypto judo match.
Okay, round two.
This is the price update splits.
Right.
This is where we see how much demand there is for Pyth's real-time data, which I know is crucial for a lot of you out there building and using DeFi applications.
Absolutely.
Their total number of price updates actually grew an impressive 67.5% year over year, reaching 336.2 million in Q4 2024.
Wow. So a lot of demand.
A lot of demand, a lot of price updates happening.
Yeah.
Well, when I look at these numbers, I'm really struck by the report calling out Sui and Aptos as the leading contributors to this.
Yeah.
They're actually making up a huge chunk of those updates.
Yeah.
54.6% coming from SUI and 38.2% from Aptos. Really signaling strong adoption in those ecosystems.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a developer working on those chains, this is
Absolutely.
pretty big news for you, right?
Yeah, if you're working on those chains, definitely take note of this.
Absolutely.
And it all comes back to Pyth's pull oracle model, right?
Wow.
Remember, these updates aren't just being blasted out there into the void.
Right.
They're a reflection of real-time demand from DeFi applications on those chains,
Exactly.
needing that precise price information to execute trades and liquidations and all sorts of other key functions, right?
Yeah.
So when we see high update volume, it really indicates a lot of activity happening in those integrated protocols.
It's like a pulse.
Exactly. It's like a pulse, a heartbeat, these DeFi ecosystems.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
And speaking of Solana, we saw a really interesting shift there.
Okay.
The report is highlighting that sponsor updates, which use the Pyth scheduler for like regular automated updates,
Right.
they really took the lead, growing by over 60% quarter over quarter.
Wow.
So it seems like there's a growing preference for this more automated and potentially cost-efficient way of getting data on Solana.
I think this raises a really important question about efficiency and cost, right?
Yeah.
So we see this significant decline in what are called atomic updates on Solana, which were gaining traction for a while.
Right.
Those involve typically a single transaction to go fetch and use the price.
Right.
But what these sponsored updates allow is basically batching those requests together and having it, pre-scheduled. So perhaps what we're seeing is applications saying, hey, this is actually a more reliable solution, or maybe just a more predictable solution for our needs.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating to see these different Oracle consumption patterns evolving on different blockchains.
Yeah, and I think this is something developers definitely need to be paying attention to, right? So let's move on to round 3, the DeFi integration grapple.
Okay, DeFi integration.
It sounds like Pyth was really active in expanding its connections in the decentralized finance world during that last quarter of 2024.
Yeah.
Which is obviously very important for anyone interacting with DeFi. They specifically mention Camino Swap integrating their Express Relay for MEV-free trading.
So what I find really exciting here is that Pyth is focusing on solving these real user problems that impact the end user, such as MEV. And by using these priority auctions, Camino Swap, using Express Relay, aims to provide a fairer trading environment, right?
Yeah.
And we see some promising early results. Users are actually getting SOL tips, almost $10,000 worth distributed, and a significant transaction volume in that short period since launch. So
that's huge.
It's pretty cool to see a concrete example of how Pyth's technology is being applied to actually benefit users.
Absolutely. And they also launched these redemption rate feeds, or RRF, which are becoming increasingly important for these liquid staking and restaking tokens that are very popular.
Right.
We're talking about assets like CDCth and USDY. They've been integrated into platforms like Ionic Protocol, ZeroLend.
Right.
So it really shows that they're keeping up with the trends.
Absolutely.
And providing that specific data that these new financial instruments need.
Liquid staking, restaking, very hot right now.
Very hot.
You need accurate real-time redemption rates to ensure the stability and functionality of these protocols that people rely on, right?
Absolutely.
So round 4 is going to take us into the realm of institutional accessibility.
Okay.
It looks like Pyth is making some really big moves to make its technology more accessible to traditional investors.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
the launch of the VanEck Pyth ETN and the 21 shares Pyth ETP in Europe, that's huge.
Yeah.
So these are regulated financial products that allow European investors to gain exposure to the PYTH token
Right.
through familiar channels, right?
Yeah.
Traditional stock exchanges. And that not only broadens the potential investor base, but it also signals this growing acceptance of decentralized Oracle technology
For sure.
by established institutions. And that ultimately could lead to greater adoption and integration for everyone. So it's a really big deal. Round 5 is all about commodity expansion. We're calling this the commodity expansion strike.
Commodity expansion, that's interesting.
Looks like Pyth might have achieved a first mover advantage here in a very interesting new area.
So what's interesting here is the diversification beyond digital assets.
Yeah.
So Pyth launching real-time price feeds for WTI and Brent crude oil opens up a whole new world of possibilities in DeFi.
Yeah.
So imagine energy-linked financial instruments finally being viable on-chain.
That's crazy.
And the fact that StormTrade, which is a perpetual futures platform, was an early adopter, shows just how much demand there is for this data right now.
Yeah,
And it just opens up all these new trading opportunities.
absolutely.
That's really exciting.
This is like a whole new ballgame.
Yeah.
So let's move on to round 6, Oracle Integrity Staking, or OIS momentum.
Okay.
Sounds like a really important part of ensuring the reliability and trustworthiness of that data.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And it's all about aligning financial incentives with data accuracy. So by staking PYTH tokens towards specific data publishers, participants are essentially vouching for the quality of that data. And we see a strong growth, 70.8% quarter-over-quarter growth in OIS staking volume. So that's reaching over $230 million.
Wow.
Which indicates growing confidence in this model.
Yeah, for sure.
More and more people are staking, and that commitment to data integrity
Yeah,
really benefits the entire network.
absolutely.
Yeah, because it makes that data more reliable for everyone.
It's like a self-reinforcing cycle.
Exactly.
The more people stake,
Yep.
the more reliable the data is.
And then, presumably, the more valuable that data becomes because it's more reliable.
And then the price goes up, and then even more people stake.
Exactly. You get that flywheel effect.
It's the flywheel, there it is.
There it is.
All right, so last but not least, round 7.
Okay.
Entropy advancement.
Entropy.
So tell us a little bit more about this and why this might be relevant to some of our listeners.
So Pyth Entropy is their secure random number generator.
Okay,
And it's continuing to see increased adoption.
that's good.
Yeah, almost 100% increase in both requests and revenue quarter over quarter.
Wow, that's huge.
So this suggests that there is a growing need for this reliable and unpredictable randomness
Yeah.
on-chain. So think about things like fair NFT mints,
Oh, okay.
decentralized gaming, all sorts of applications where you need a truly random number,
Right.
and you need to be able to trust that that number is not being manipulated.
So this is kind of like the underlying infrastructure to make sure that those applications are actually fair and random.
Exactly. It's
Okay.
early days, but I think this consistent growth really hints at its potential long-term viability
For sure.
and the increasing demand for this secure randomness on blockchains.
All right, so after 7 rounds, it seems like we have a pretty clear winner emerging
Yeah,
based on the data from Q4 2024.
I think so.
I'm calling this a TKO for Pyth.
Wow, TK.
The State of Pyth Q4 2024 report
Yeah,
really showcases a series of technical knockout punches.
I'd have to agree with you. Looking at all of these metrics, it's pretty compelling. It really paints a picture of strong momentum for Pyth.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we all know Chainlink is still a major player in the broader Oracle market.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But this snapshot from Q4 2024 really highlights Pyth's rapid growth and increasing traction,
Yeah,
especially in those transaction-intensive applications.
absolutely.
And just pushing the boundaries of what Oracle networks can do, right?
Yeah, I think they're really innovative, doing things that other Oracle networks aren't doing, like those oil price feeds.
The oil price feeds, that's
Yeah, that's groundbreaking.
huge.
Who knows what that'll unlock?
So, to wrap things up for the listeners,
Yeah.
key takeaways here. Pyth's impressive surge in transaction volume and price updates,
Yeah.
successful integrations with platforms like Camino Swap, the introduction of their redemption rate feeds,
Those are crucial.
their expansion into institutional investment products,
Yeah.
new asset classes like oil,
Groundbreaking.
and that increasing confidence through the adoption of OIS and entropy.
All pointing to a very strong Q4 2024 for Pyth.
It's quite a story.
It is.
And it's just the beginning, right?
And listeners,
So we want to leave you with some questions to consider, right? What does this rapid growth in TTV really mean for the future of DeFi oracles?
good question.
How might established players like Chainlink adapt to this increasing competition, especially in that area of transaction volume?
Like,
And what exciting new opportunities might these real-time commodity price feeds unlock
oh yeah, for DeFi,
within DeFi, right?
for builders and users.
For you builders, for you users, what's going to happen?
That's the exciting part.
So I think ultimately this just reminds us how dynamic and fast-paced the crypto space really is.
For sure.
The evolution of Oracle solutions is ongoing.
It's not stopping.
And it's fascinating to observe these different approaches and how the market responds, right?
Absolutely.